Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Thank you for coming to the community center here in Buena. Once again, my name's Steve Martinelli. I am a recovering drug addict. I have been clean since 1986. You all know that I have. Thank you. You all know that I have a son who followed in my footsteps. He's been clean for 5 years now. He's a union electrician just like me. And I'm here today with a lot of people to talk to you. Hopefully, they'll have you in a captive, you'll be a captive audience. We've got law enforcement here. We've got the Buena Regional School System here. We have a recovering heroin addict with 11 years of being clean in the audience. He's going to speak today. We also have a representative from Seabrook House who accompanied him here. You folks all know that I'm alumni from Seabrook House, as is my son. So, you're going to hear language today or words that you may not understand. Words like dependent, codependent, detox, recovery. It's a process. It's a life-changing experience for the drug addict. It's a life-changing experience for those folks in the circle of life of that drug addict. So, I don't want to jam up law enforcement here. So my first presenter tonight, along with his officers, is the Chief of Police representing Franklin Township, Brian Zimmer. Brian, would you come up here with your 3 officers, please? Brian is going to talk to us about their experiences in law enforcement as it relates to drug addicts and alcoholics when they see them at their very worst. Brian, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Martinelli. Again, I'm Chief Zimmer, Brian Zimmer from the Franklin Township Police Department. This is Captain Gordon Muller. This is Lieutenant Gonzalez, and this is Officer La Salenta. Officer La Salenta is actually a drug recognition expert. I did that years ago, and I really liked it, but it's a different world right now for that type of thing than when I got into it years ago, and he'll touch on it a little bit in a moment. For those of you that don't know, we've basically come over here into Buena Borough and Newfield, and not that it's been that drastic of a change with everything. It's just society in general has definitely taken a dive when it comes to opioids and prescription medications. We've definitely noticed a spike. Captain Muller is actually in charge of our Narcan deployment. He keeps statistics, and years ago we got defibrillators, and everybody waited around for the chance to use them, and you waited forever. You really didn't get a chance to use them. Then Narcan came along, and it was the same thing. Everybody wanted to get that chance to use it, and at this point, we use it way too much. He can't even keep up with getting it. Now that we're getting it in Atlantic County and Gloucester County, it helps us a lot. We get it for free, thank God, because it's pretty expensive, and we're deploying it a lot. Some of the laws are tough for us. We go to a residence, and there could be drugs here and there and everywhere, and we're hitting people 2-3 times. Some people, they're not getting the message, they're not learning, and sometimes we feel like we're helping that. We're helping them along to continue these things, but in the long run, we know that eventually, hopefully, they'll be able to get help. Maybe if some of the laws would change to force these people to get that type of help, to have maybe charges hanging over their head, may push certain people. I don't think it's going to help them all. Some of them may be too far entrenched in it. But I'm going to let Captain Muller talk a little bit about some of the statistics and how we've evolved in 5 years that we've been using it. So, Captain Muller.
Like the Chief said, I am the Narcan coordinator for our township. I train all of our officers in how to use and when to use Narcan. As he said, we recently have been really using it way more than we'd really like to. 5 years ago when we started the program, we had maybe 10 deployments, successful deployments. Over the years, it's gotten gradually more. This year we're on track to do over 30 deployments. It's definitely helped with when you arrive on scene, pictures up being an officer, and you see a loved one laying on the floor and they need some type of help. We show up with the Narcan. Everyone's screaming at you, can you please save them? Can you help them? You break that out and administer it, and they come back to life. It's a real good feeling that you just saved somebody's life. Years ago, it used to be intravenous, and that had a real fast comeback. We didn't carry it. The medics would show up, they would do it intravenous, and they would snap back, and they'd be combative. They would get sick, vomit, fight with you. Now it's done through the nose. It's shot up each nostril, and it's a gradual comeback. So it's just like someone waking up, and then they're back with you again. When we deploy it, we will force them to go to the hospital. We have case law telling us that we are allowed to make sure that they go, because Narcan, you don't know how much drugs they've ingested, and Narcan isn't a permanent fix. It just makes you sober instantly. But when that goes away, you can relapse. And if everybody leaves and they're still sitting on the couch, they can relapse again. So we force them to go to the hospital. But it's been, I just re-upped again this weekend. Last week I think we had 3 successful deployments. So it's really becoming a common thing now with our patrol officers, but a good thing. It's working. I don't really have too much to say about Narcan after that. Do you have anything?
Officer LaSalenta, would you like to add anything? Like I said, he's been a drug recognition expert for some years now, and he's very into psychophysicals of people, their eyes, the way they breathe, they talk, everything that they do. But he can elaborate on that.
Thank you, Chief. My name is Officer LaSalenta. I'm a patrol officer of Franklin Township. As Chief stated, I got the opportunity to go to a school. It's called Drug Recognition Expert. It's a pretty lengthy school. It teaches you the opposite side of drugs, basically. So we were talking about Narcan, and that saves you during and after an overdose. I kind of get the front half of it. DWIs, everybody kind of considers a DWI, drive while intoxicated, over alcohol. I have the opportunity and be one of the specialized officers in the county and the state to determine intoxication on drugs. So we have 7 drug categories that we learn about, including, your heroin, which is a narcotic, your depressants, your antidepressants, anything. It could be prescription medications that maybe someone's abusing, or they just accidentally took the wrong amount. So what they consider the average trained officer who would determine, yes, this person is intoxicated, they would make the arrest. At that time that they see it's not alcohol, they would contact someone with my certification, called a drug recognition expert. I would come out and I go through a 12-step program. After doing those 12 steps, I make a determination as an expert, considered an expert, to tell you what you're intoxicated by. I then get a voluntary urine sample that backs my, what we call a call. I say it may be a narcotic. Maybe I believe the person is high on heroin and they're operating a vehicle. I say, you're high on heroin. We get the urine back and the courts agree with me. It's nasty how much I'm used. I mean, as Chief and Captain both said, we see it fairly often. When I went through the school, there was, if I remember correctly, about 200 drug recognition officers in the state of New Jersey. We're up to about 300 now, so it's fairly few and far between compared to the amount of officers out there. But it's a necessity nowadays, unfortunately. I get to be on call. I'm on call now in Atlantic County. I'm on their call-out list now that we render to Buena as well. Gloucester County, I'm on call, and I get the opportunity through Captain and Chief who have allowed me to do that. So, I get to help other departments out as well. I get to assist with that. I also get to run with Atlantic County for the DWI. They have not a task force, they do DWI checkpoints. I'm sure you saw us in Buena when we ran one. So I get to go around Atlantic County when they have them. I get the opportunity to go out there as a drug recognition expert and stop intoxicated drivers. Keep it safe for you.
How much have you seen since you've been certified? Has it changed with how many people you're dealing with?
Dramatically. My first year, I did 9 evals. This year, I'm already up to 13. So, I mean, it's dramatically increasing, and officers are becoming more knowledgeable on it. And it's a good thing, because I can tell you, before I went to the class, and Chief had gone through the class before, you start to see things differently. You look at people a little differently. You don't just have to have an odor of alcohol to determine someone is intoxicated. You get to look beyond that and determine beyond that. So, you know, as officers start to recognize it more and we get better trained, and unfortunately we need to be because of the increase of drug use as of late, it helps. It keeps the roads safe, and unfortunately, you know, doing the evaluations, and then I receive what's called toxicology, which is those voluntary urine samples, and we really see what's in people's systems while they're operating vehicles, and it would amaze you sometimes what people have in their blood system and in their body while they're operating a vehicle. So it's extremely increased in the last couple of years that I've noticed.
I want to ask you a question.
Yes, sir.
The captain, just before our program started, explained to me that he had an officer in the parking lot with your experience. That's brand new to me. I was always under the impression that it was very hard to determine someone stopped to buy a patrol officer to determine if they were on drugs. And I think that's valuable for our community to know that. I'm around a lot of young people, school children, and the concept with these children is that, well, if we do alcohol, they could smell it on our breath, or they could tell we've been drinking. But if we do marijuana, or we do this, or we do that, they can't.
Yes, sir.
Now, based on what you just said here today, we're going to go into the schools. This program is going to go into the schools, and the superintendent of the schools is here in the audience. I'm wondering, and I have to think about this, and I have to talk to the superintendent. Would you be willing, or could you get permission from the chief and the captain to make a presentation with us in the schools?
Absolutely. I'm sure the chief would be completely okay with that, doing a presentation. It is all based on, my training is based on a series of, 12 steps. So
Okay.
It is an extensive thing, and it is up and coming, I guess you would say. There's definitely more and more officers being trained with it, but determining the intoxication from drugs is, although it is much more difficult, and only certain officers are being trained on exactly how to determine what drug you're intoxicated by. The determining that you are intoxicated by a specific drug, we are being trained on that more and more, if that makes sense, with the up and coming amount of drug users and drug use there is out there with the DWIs.
Do you have to leave, or can you stick around?
I can hang as long as the chief is okay with that. I can stay.
Later on, I'd like to introduce you to our school superintendent. Okay?
Absolutely.
Mr. Martinelli said, can you see what goes on with these kids? And kids have this belief that you can't. The eyes are the windows to the soul. And as Nick has learned, you start to look at people's eyes, and you pay a little more attention to those things. So kids that think that we just need to smell alcohol is completely not true. Ask my kids. They've heard this from day one. Don't try to pull the wool over my eyes, because I'm going to know what's going on. I walk down the boardwalk now, and I look at people, and I'm like, they're high, they're high, they're high. Once you know what to look for, and that's what we're trying to train law enforcement, is to look for those little things. It's not just, do I smell alcohol, are they driving funny, get them out, they can't walk and they can't stand on one foot. You can look at their eyes, you can listen to their speech, and that's why cops make idle conversation. They'll ask you about your shoes. They want to be able to look you in the eye and see what's going on. So absolutely, that's something that even teachers in the schools should probably start to know and learn, and that way you're going to see it. Because how many times have you seen kids come out of school now that they're in college or going in the workforce and saying, hey, I was on heroin every day, all day, and teachers had no idea. Just look at YouTube. You'll see a million of these kids that went out there and said that. So I just wanted to touch on that real quick. Yeah, it is,
Thank you.
It is a good thing to learn. Thank you.
I neglected to mention that we have EMS here from Buena Borough, and we have EMS here again from Buena Vista Township. I'm going to ask Rhonda and Soren to come on up here, please. Folks, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. I'm Rhonda.
I'm Chief Freeman of Buena Vista.
You wanna-
All right, a couple things I knew 2 weeks ago we talked about some of the contradictions with overdoses and what we deal with. I know tonight or today I was asked to bring up about what happens if Narcan doesn't work. The people who are overdosing who eventually wind up dying from the heroin overdose or any kind of opiate overdose that will cause it. I know quite a few times, I know we had an issue with a set of grandparents in a house in one of the senior areas in the township where the one girl said she was going to take a shower. She went into the shower. About an hour later, they didn't see her. They knocked on her door. She didn't answer. When they opened the door, they found her unconscious on the floor. Well, she wound up shooting up in the bathroom before she even jumped in the shower and wound up overdosing. By the time we got there, we performed CPR. It wasn't successful. And this poor family had to deal with the death of their granddaughter. I don't know what happened with her parents. I heard there was issues with that in the past, but that's a couple of things we dealt with.
I just want to say too that it does not discriminate. So we recently just had somebody who was in their 60s who we had an Narcan. It's not always the younger kids. It's not, the homeless kids or anything like that. It just seems any kind of call that we go on, it's either going to be prescription drugs or it is going to be heroin. So for anybody who thinks that it's somebody who's homeless or anything like that, it just seems like the kids these days are not even smoking a joint. If they are, it's probably laced with something. So we always have to go to school, we always have to keep up with our credits, we always have to keep up with any kind of schooling with any kind of narcotics that come out because they're always one step ahead of us.
Mm-hmm. So on that, we actually had somebody that was actually in their 70s, but it was a patient who had cancer, and he kind of figured out the best way to go would be what he used to do in the past was shoot up heroin, and his wife said he went out with a friend and came home later on that day and found them passed away in the room. So I mean, it's any age. Anybody could be doing it. I mean, I think the youngest we had was like 16, 17 years old. Nothing really younger than that. But usually the people we do deal with, they're usually in their 20s. It seems like the highest amount. But it's scary. I mean, some of these people I see on the street all the time, talk to them, seem like they're great people, and then the next day you're going to their house because of the overdose, and sometimes you have no clue actually that they're actually into that. So it's amazing. I have friends I went to school with, performed CPR on them, and they wind up passing away because of heroin. So it's very dangerous. Anything else you can think of?
Thank you for coming. I appreciate it.
Yep.
Problem.
I'm going to ask the new school superintendent, Buena Regional, Mr. Dave Capuccio. He has with him a curriculum coordinator. Folks, come on up here, join me. Introduce yourselves, talk a little bit about what your game plan is in this next year, and then we're going to talk a little bit about how we're going to coordinate this thing in October.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Dave Capuccio. Thank you for having me here with you. I appreciate the invitation. Our director of curriculum is a little camera shy. Her name is Courtney McNeely. Like myself, we're both new to the district. I am not new to the surrounding area. So I was born and raised in Hamilton and Folsom, so right down the road from here. I am the grandson of a recovering alcoholic, so I appreciate the work that you all do and what the Alliance does. And from the school district's perspective, I know my grandfather, who's no longer with us, would be very pleased that I'm going to be working with Steve and the Alliance on something that was very dear to his heart with his recovery. And I know the amount of support that it takes for individuals in those situations. It's also great to put a name with a face with Chief Zimmer. How you doing, Chief? We spoke on the phone, and what Mr. Martinelli alluded to, the school district is going to be very interested in any type of preventative measures that we can do. So any type of presentations or anything that the police department wishes to do with us, we will be more than cooperative and collaborative with you guys, having you come out and whatnot. So we certainly appreciate all the work that you do in helping the children within our community, and you will have my full support. So for those that don't know, law enforcement officials and school districts have a memorandum of understanding where there's a collaborative relationship where we share information with them and they share information with us. And we'll be meeting with the chief and his folks to sign that for this year. And then I'll also be looking to go over to the police department and meeting some of the folks, like the individuals that are here today, that may be working with our school district, helping us out. And I think the key for us will be prevention. So any type of preventative measures that we could do with the young people in our high school and middle school, and even younger if appropriate. Certainly we're going to welcome. The opioid crisis has hit, I think, a lot of school districts. My last school district that I was at, we were, I think, the first school district in Camden County that brought Narcan into the school district. So as a new administrator within Buena, we'll be looking to see what our policies are here. I'm not sure at this point. Most of the staff is off for the summer, and I'm getting to know everybody, but whether or not we have Narcan in our high school and our middle school, I'm not sure at this point in time, but I'll be working with our nurses and our Board of Education with respect to updating our policies. And I brought Ms. McNeely with us today as our Director of Curriculum. Again, if there's things within our curriculum that we need to address specific to prevention and whatnot, and working with EMS, police department, whoever it may be, we certainly look forward to having that opportunity. But it's great to be part of the Buena community, and privileged to be here, and I appreciate the opportunity Mr. Martinelli's given me. So, did you want to say something?
I was just going to kind of echo what Mr. Cappuccio said, in that obviously the school is very supportive of all these efforts. We appreciate the alliance, and of course curricular concerns and all of the things that we can do to support you in the school we'll definitely move on to do. And professional development wise, we want the teachers to be trained and the staff to be trained as well. So this is a great opportunity for us. Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I just want to make a couple, three introductions here. Of course, I call her my co-chair, Rosalie. She is a champion in this particular project, and I'm behind her 100%. Committeeman John Williams is here from Buena Vista Township, along with Committeeman Dave Turner. He is also a champion in all of us are champions in the Drug Alliance. I just want to explain a little bit about this next step, moving into the schools. Statistically, after talking to Sean Collins last week, drug addiction is now in the 4th grade. It's in the 4th grade. Now, there's a lot of reasons why. I'm not going to go into them today. But our objective here, along with law enforcement, EMS, and educators, including Mr. Cappuccio, is to have the school district or the teachers, educators, select a group of children. I don't care from what walks of life they come from. The only qualification that I'm going to ask the school to do for me is that these children might become solid peer leaders, so that when they move up into the high school in the 9th grade, they are participating in the school about some of the things going on in Atlantic County as it relates to drug addiction or alcoholism or any other problem that they may have. And of course, if law enforcement comes, EMS comes, we have to be geared together so that our presentation is around the mindset of an 8th grader. I don't want the 8th graders afraid of us. I don't want the 8th graders afraid of the police or EMS or their school officials. That's the last thing I want to do. But I want to get these children on board, maybe 3 presentations during the school year, so that we get these children prepared to move up into the 9th grade. Dave will be attending our televised meeting in Buena Vista Township. hopefully he can get back with me then and provide me with a little bit more input. I know that I do have some educators willing to help out, and I have to be very careful that I make a presentation that's geared for these children and not for adults like the folks in this room. Look, our next presenter is a recovering heroin addict. He's been clean for 11 years. I know exactly the shitstorm he went through. I know it to the T. I'm going to introduce him as TJ. He brought with him one of the folks from Seabrook House. I'm going to ask her to come up here and join him. He is going to tell you, he's going to give testimony about his drug addiction. TJ, come on up. Give him a big round of applause.
What's up, everybody? I'm a grateful recovering addict. My name is TJ.
Hi, I'm Abby.
This is Abby. I always, have to say a special thanks and a prayer to the God that I believe in first, because if you knew me close to 11 years ago, you wouldn't even recognize that person. I was, skeletal, to say the least, about 170 pounds, dead in the eyes, as those officers were saying. No hope, no light in my heart, no energy or a spirit or a semblance of the human being that I am today. And that was a direct result of using drugs. And it was ultimately heroin that brought me down, but it was a lot of things along the way to get to that point. And, I thank this district, the municipality, all the servants. You guys are really, truly in service, saving lives. Like, we have love and empathy and compassion, and truly wish that no Narcan had to be administered, or no overdoses needed to not only increase but let alone happen with the younger population to the old, like the EMTs had described. This addiction, whether you believe it's a disease that an individual is born with, or something that an individual becomes through years of continuous drug use and substance abuse, it really doesn't matter. The fact is that statistically, our people are dropping like flies, and it is starting younger. I mean, I had my first get high probably about 6th grade. So, they're saying, it's in the schools at the 4th grade level. I'm not even surprised, and it saddens me to know that kids are venturing into the intravenous use. It's still in the middle schools, in the grade school level, and it's horrible and it's heartbreaking. But I want to share the hope that I've made it to the other side of the realm. I've had a lot of help along the way. There's a lot of things I do, but a lot of people have helped me make it through. Today we have 10 years, 8 months, and 13 days, but who's counting, right? And they are all beautiful, blessed days, regardless of how difficult, how easy, how amazing, or how absolutely just boring and normal, wake up and go to work. Just to simply wake up and go to work and open my eyes and have the ability to thank God and find some gratitude and a positive attitude without needing to get ripped off of anything I can find just to get me to where I needed to go to get one more is a miracle. And like what's going on right now, it is a tragedy. It is an epidemic, a pandemic, but it's something that is absolutely preventable, and there is absolutely recovery available through many, many avenues. But we're here to make that attractive, because we know, at least I know, that I'm an addict through and through. I don't listen to reason. I have to learn through experience, and it's a hard-headed one. I have to bang my head against the wall time in and time out before I decide to do something different. I'll just tell a little bit of background about myself, because I want to dispel any misinformation. Once again, what the EMTs were saying about the fact that this does not discriminate. I've heard it said so eloquently by another friend of mine in the fellowship that the pain of the homeless person panhandling for change and the pain of the person that has the $100,000 degree and the house and the car and the wife and the husband and the kid and the white picket fence and the dog and the 2.5 cats and the 3-car garage, it's all the same if you're caught in the grip of the shit, And it's nothing short of a lightning bolt or a miracle that is supernatural in nature to get somebody out of that. And it's not necessarily just through treatment. We are thankful that there are so many roads, and I know I've been down all of them. I've been to detox, I've overdosed, I've been hospitalized, I've seen therapists, I've been counseled, I've sat in rooms, isolated, solitary confinements, I've gone to inpatient, to outpatient, I've gone to Florida, I've gone up north, I've gone everywhere you could possibly go except in here. And that's when I needed to change. When I found somebody else who was exactly like me and it felt the exact same way that I felt in that predicament, that gave me that helping hand up and told me I don't have to be ashamed. You know, like the other thing I want to talk about to dispel that myth and that rumor and to shatter the illusion is, like, as an addict, I'm not a bad person that needs to get good. You know, that I'm incapable of doing good. I'm a sick person in need of healing. We're sick people who need to heal, and it's damn near impossible, if not extremely freaking difficult, to do it while we're under the influence of anything. And that goes for alcohol and marijuana. You know, it's just the heroin, it hits the button from 0 to 60 to 150, just like that. And, you know, a little bit of background. So I started smoking weed and I started drinking pretty regularly when I was about 11, 12 years old. And it evolved from there really quick. Like, it went from maybe just a little bit on the weekend, catch a buzz, and that was it. And then soon after, you know, the weekend wasn't good enough anymore. I had to get stoned before school. And then when I was getting stoned before school, I had to get obliterated on the weekend to make up for the fact that I needed to be functional enough to make it through class and all this and that. And then soon enough, like, the pills came, you know, the hallucinogens came, and then I discovered cocaine. And we all know the story in so many different ways and versions. But it wasn't just like I started smoking weed one day and then I just started shooting dope the next. It was a gradual hook that just sank its teeth into me and just drugged me around wherever I could go. And listen, I'm not from a broken home, have a scarred upbringing, and was abused and just completely thrown to the wayside. I was given everything I needed to the point where my parents went without, and they sacrificed. And nothing was perfect by any means, but there was no reason for me to physically look at my situation and think that the only way out or through this was through using drugs. I got comfortable with the feeling, the inebriation, the intoxication. And as soon as I discovered the opiates, it's crazy. Oxy 80s were really big about 15, 20 years ago. And they weren't really talked about, and they were cheap. And the high was, in my opinion, even better than today's heroin because it was pure and synthetic. And that was the thing that eventually brought me to my knees, to my lowest point, because that had run out and it was very difficult to get. And I'd actually had a few friends that had already gone further down the line than me with the heroin. They were sniffing and shooting. And for some reason, just I had a moment of clarity, even still using, I had a moment of clarity, and I saw that I didn't want to end up sick like that and not being able to function. I couldn't wrap my head around it. I'm like, what happened to you? You used to be an amazing athlete, or, you know, have a good job, and now, you know, you're just living to hide in dark corners of the room, and we're not going to parties anymore. But little did I know, the day that I ran out of those pills that I liked so much, you know, I just tried the heroin, and it was like, that's what I've been looking for my whole life, you know. And that's why, as soon as I felt that feeling, I was immediately consumed by it, and I chased it. And the funny thing about my story, I don't know how unique it really is, because you know, every addict or alcoholic is you know, different flavors of the same fruit. But I had sniffed it for a few years before I ever even think or thought I would consider picking up a needle. But just like that, day and night, it stopped working, and I was ready to try the other way, and I did. And it wasn't very long after that really bad things started to happen. I started crashing cars. I started, you know, checking into hospitals and going to treatment programs a lot more frequently. And pretty soon my life spun so far out of control that I didn't even have people I could call my friends. I had people I used with, and honestly, I was in Camden more days than not. I was in Kensington, I was in Atlantic City and Pleasantville. I was in all the worst places you could possibly imagine anyone being, let alone a young person with a bright future, just with no hope, and I felt comfortable, And I grew up in a place that is very similar to Paradise. It's a beach community. There's really not a crime element to worry about, and it's in every community, no matter where we are on the map. And the problem is that I never thought it was a problem because I thought it was normal and acceptable to get high. The problem with me getting high, being an addict, I don't stop getting high when I stop getting high. I only consider stopping when all I feel like all day, every day, regardless of how many drugs I've done, is I just want to die. We've heard it said that addicts are weak, and this is a disease that can be chosen differently, and just why can't we just turn our feet to a different direction and go another path? But the problem with that is that I find it easier to change my perception of reality than to actually change my reality. Because really what I need to change is my personality. My attitudes and my ideas are the only things that are going to change my behavior. If I want to stop using drugs, I have to start figuring out what led me to use them and why I felt so comfortable under the influence. And that's why I needed the people that I found in the 12-step fellowships. And I'm not going to get into the specifics, but people had told me that the only way I was ever going to amount to anything and become something for someone else is to help myself and to take a look at myself, and in that process start to help someone else. And the way that became was in recovery. I call it the 3 S's of success. The word success itself is spelled with 3 S's, and for me it means step work, sponsorship, and service. Step work is the 12 steps. Sponsorship is somebody who's an experienced member that can guide you through those 12 steps. And then the service is something as simple as, just like this is a meeting right now, somebody had to come in here, set up these chairs, the table, the coffee get made. That's what happens in 12-step fellowships. And there's no requirement to do that stuff in the beginning, to pick up cigarette butts, to welcome people when they walk through the door. And I was welcomed long before I wanted to really consider a future of not using drugs. I was really just content enough to be abstinent, not really be recovering or gaining any serenity. I really just wanted to hold a job, to hold some money in my pocket that wasn't spent before I even got the paycheck cash, to get things back that I had not lost but given away due to my active addiction, like my license. I owed everyone and everything, and I was running from everyone and everything. But the most important thing I had to connect with was that I was running from myself. And no matter how fast I am, no matter how hard I train or things that I do, I can never outrun this rat race that's going on in my head. Every single day I have to wake up and I have to make the decision to surrender to what I believe is God's will. And I don't know what God's will is always truly, but I do know it's not to get high, it's not to die through using drugs, it's not to cause harm to myself and others, and it's to the best of my ability to be put in a position to help another man, woman, child that not needlessly go down this path if possible. And even when it comes to my doorstep, not be a coward and run away like that person that I once was, where I didn't want to deal with life. I remember getting bills in the mail and ripping them up and throwing them in the trash can, acting like they would go away if I just didn't acknowledge them. And basically the bottom line, August 28th, 2007, my dad committed suicide. I still couldn't get a needle out of my arm to save my life. Didn't even want to. I had actually moved up here to Franklin Township because the only people that would give me a chance were my aunt and uncle, which I thought was amazing, to let an actively using heroin addict into the house when there was a good possibility that not only was I going to continue to use, but possibly overdose as a result of relapse and die on the bathroom floor. and they saved my life because that started my journey in recovery, and I struggled for a few weeks, off and on. I think I remember coming up here, it was September. I watched some of the September 11th coverage, and I'd stayed clean for a little bit, just trying to do it on my own and stay busy and work hard outside and just do what I could, because I damn sure didn't have any money to pay my way as far as rent goes and all that. But like I said, man, these thoughts just still came. I have this thing where I personally believe that active addiction is equatable to demonic possession, right? Like, I have this dark entity inside of me, this beast, this gorilla, so to speak, that just will not go away, and it cannot be suppressed or oppressed. It has to be faced head on, and I have to make that decision to leave it sleeping in its cage. But just because it's sleeping and it's not awake right now, it doesn't mean that it's gone, poof, and out of existence. So I went to a few relapses, and I couldn't get straight on my own, obviously, and I'd never lost the resolve to keep trying and keep going and keep getting denied. And I had no insurance, and I had no money and resources. But you know what? I just beat down the doors. I called people and other people, and people eventually let me in on some information. I was able to get into a free detox. It was only 3 days, and I had relapsed one more time after coming out of there. Halloween was the last day that I used heroin of 2007. And I remember being at the costume parade at the school, and I'm just looking at all these little kids. And I'm like, man, I remember being that little kid, just all I cared about was having the best costume or looking like the scariest dude. I'm getting emotional because I'm seeing my cousins, and I look at I have little brothers who also have suffered from this affliction, and I'm just I'm going to die. I am absolutely going to die, and I'm totally okay with it. See, this is the thing that nobody really talks about with addicts that aren't in the fellowships and have the inside information of what recovery is like. We are not afraid to die. We will willingly accept our death every single second of the day when we're doing this stuff. But what we're terrified of more than anything else is to truly live our lives. To truly live without the use of anything inside, because we fear that withdrawal and that sickness it's never going to pass. I can only describe it to you in the terms that I can feel it myself, and it basically felt like if you took those 3 big officers back there and gave each one of them an aluminum bat and told them to beat every bone in my body. That's what it feels like when you're kicking the withdrawal from heroin. And whether it's pills, whether it's in a bag that you're just sniffing, or you're shooting, that is the worst feeling in the world. But guess what? After a couple days, couple weeks, even at hardcore use, it goes away. So I got out of that detox. I had another relapse, and I just decided I was done. I continued in the outpatient program I was in. And, I stumbled a lot along the way, and it took a lot of courage to get through that first year. And I can't say that every day I wanted to be in recovery and I wanted to work on myself, because I really didn't want to look at myself, and I really didn't want to face the harm that I had done and the people that I'd hurt and all that. But I just said, you know what? Just for today, I'm going to be okay. Let me just try to continue to live this way. And other people gave me hope, and they gave me courage. And when I saw new people that come in and they were struggling and they had that same broken look that I had just had on my face 30, 60, 90 days ago, the days were coming. They were turning into weeks. The weeks were turning into months. And before you knew it, I had a year. And I'm up here, in a room a little bit more full than this, no camera. But I was terrified. You wouldn't even think I'm scared of speaking right now. But I was absolutely mortified. What am I going to say? And I just remember they got me a big chocolate chip cookie. I couldn't even eat. I had knots in my stomach like a barrel of monkeys doing backflips. And I finally realized, with that little glimpse of hope, that little glimmer of light, seeing how far I had come, I got a little sneak preview of how far I could truly go. And we're coming up on 11 years this November, and every single day, I thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Every single day, I have more serenity. I have learned that the only things that I can change are the way that I see myself and the way that I react to everyone, everything else. And both of those things have become healthier. I look at myself as a strong man who's able to help and make a positive impact in this world and change the direction of the future of the youth and the people that are still out there sick and suffering, because I'm willing to do something. And I can respond rather than react. Guess what? When I sit in traffic, I don't have to lay on the horn. I don't have to flip somebody the bird. I don't have to drive erratically. When somebody's slow coming in and out of Wawa, I can smile. I can I can give them a little piece of me that was given freely through what I believe in God working through another person that had nothing to gain, but had once felt like it was everything to lose. So, I don't know. I hope I gave you guys a little bit of insight. I fully support everything we can possibly do to inspire proactive recovery and whatever preventative measures to show where the death and the darkness and the despair of all this drug really leads. And I know that it's a long road, and it's a war that isn't won overnight, but over the course of time we can spread the light in this world. And I'm going to give you guys one thing that I give a lot of the guys and girls that I get to see. It's called a serenity kick, and this is what I do. I kick it in the neck because it needs no more respect. Thanks for letting me share, guys.
My name's Abby. I work at Seabrook, and TJ also works at Seabrook. He's a recovery coach here, so he gets to work with the patients. And I work in the alumni department at Seabrook. So I really like my job there because I get to work on like the tail end of treatment. So I really believe that recovery starts when you leave treatment, right? So when you go to treatment, like you really need time away from everything to like kind of get your head together and everything. But when you leave treatment, that's when you really need to start your recovery. You need to go to the rooms. You need to get a network. You need to go be productive in the world. And I'm also in recovery, so that's also a cool aspect of it. So I get to share my experience to kind of help everybody once they leave also. And TJ's a good friend of mine too, so it was really cool. I never got to hear his story, so that was a really cool story to hear. It's really rewarding being able to work at Seabrook and be in recovery as well, because we get to watch. We were in that position, you know what I mean, and then we get to watch people feel like scared straight. For somebody like me, scared straight doesn't really work. You can tell me like, I'm a recovering heroin addict, and if you told me when I was getting high, like if you get high you're gonna die, I would have been like, do you promise? Like, that's how it really felt, like, do you promise? Like, promise me that. And so like that never worked for me. But like on the flip side of that, like the hope that TJ just shared, like that would have worked. You know what I mean? If somebody told me that, like if you get clean, you'll feel better. That would have worked. And I wish like I heard that. You know what I mean? I wish I was able to hear that when I was getting high. It's a real pleasure that I was able to hear that today. And I hope that this initiative that going into the schools, like it's really important, because I was getting high in high school and I was getting high in middle school, and I know it's not talked about enough. It's not. So like I said, bring the hope into the schools, and it'd be a big change. So thank you
for coming.
Thank you.
I always promise Rosalie, and I promise you folks too, that I would run this presentation for an hour. If there's questions from the audience here, everybody that made a presentation here tonight is still, or this afternoon or this morning, is still here. I'm not going to open up the floor for questions. I think it's better if we interact amongst one another. But I do want to thank each and every one of you for coming. I want to remind you that we'll be back again in 2 weeks. Same place, same time, same presentation, just a different dialogue. Once again, I want to thank TJ. Whether he's got 11 years or whether he's got a week. It takes a lot of courage to stand up in front of a room and expose your guts and the storm that you've been through to get where you are today. I went through it. I was 3 years before I was comfortable in my own skin, and I had the benefit of Seabrook House and the entire counseling staff over there to get me through it. And of course, I spent the next 20 years in rooms just like DJ, making presentations, telling my testimony, telling my story, and I was never unwelcome. I was always welcome. I've talked all over the state at different organizations about recovery, about my experience. And with that, it's 11 o'clock. I'm going to say thank you for coming. I want you to have a great week.
Thank you.